All right, so I came across this paper today. The title of it was Early Life Exposure to Air Pollution and Childhood Asthma, Cumulative Incidence in the ECHO Crew Consortium. And essentially this study followed over 5,000 children, and it looked at how air pollution might contribute to their incidence of asthma. And the conclusions are really strong in this study. Here, they conclude the findings suggest that exposure to PM2.5 or NO₂ air pollution during early childhood may play a role in the development of childhood asthma, with high risk among minoritized families living in densely populated communities, characterized by fewer opportunities and resources and multiple environmental co-exposures. And so these are really strong claims, and I'm not here to necessarily dispute the validity of them because I think this study was actually done pretty well. But I think there might be more to it. I think there's other ways where there's a gap in the data that they're using in this study. Here's what they actually did. They were seeking to examine early life exposure to fine particulate matter, PM2.5, and nitrogen oxide, NO₂, air pollution, and asthma risk by early and middle childhood. And the goal was to understand after those first few years, how likely were you to have asthma by age 4 and then by age 11. And so let's talk a bit more about PM2.5 and nitrogen oxide. PM2.5 are essentially those fine dust particles that get deep inside your lungs. And NO₂ is likely from traffic, other combustion sources, just think generalized air pollution. And many of these sources could be both from your home and environmental sources, although in this study, they're trying to really focus on that zip code level information. And in this early age group, it's really important because your lungs are still developing, your immune system's still developing. And so it will be interesting to see over the course of this study how early exposure in years 1 through 3 will impact your lung health even beyond age 11. Next, let's look at the results. In Table 2, we see the risk of asthma incidence and odds of asthma for PM2.5 and nitrogen oxide for early years. And the way we look at this is they're looking at the risk of asthma by age 4 and the risk of asthma by age 11. And this is based on a survival study. And the way to read this table is that if you have an interquartile increase in the amount of nitrogen oxide and PM2.5 in just the first year of life, you have about a 10% increased risk of asthma by age 4 and a 25% increase by age 4 for PM2.5. If we look at the average over years 1 and 2 and then years 1 through 3, you see that we have about a 25% increase and a 30% increase. And by age 11, it does drop a little bit from these earlier years, but we see they're still significantly elevated by an interquartile increase in NO₂. So they're really trying to demonstrate that without even using extreme values of nitrogen oxide or PM2.5, just an increase in the amount, you do see a substantial increase in the risk of asthma by age 11. Next, I want to point you to this paragraph here, because it demonstrates that they're not using extreme values to understand the impact of these particular contaminants. We examined effect modification of air pollution averaged over the first 3 years of life by neighborhood factors. We found that for an interquartile increase in PM2.5, children who resided in certain areas yielded an increase in the risk of asthma. They also noted the same thing for nitrogen oxide as well. And so we're going to dive a bit deeper into the data because we see that there's already an effect based on all children. And in Table 3, we're going to look at different areas. Before we do that, let me show you how they were able to subdivide some of the groups. They use a social vulnerability index, an SVI, and its domains. And so these are looking at indicators for socioeconomic well-being, so poverty, unemployment, income, and high school diploma attainment, as well as household composition and disability. So are there folks older than 65, or how many folks under the age of 17? Are you living with a civilian with a disability or a single parent household? Same for minority status and language, and housing and transportation. So this is the social vulnerability. Index. They also use a child opportunity index with various subcategories for education, looking at, what is the educational attainment and proficiency for various things like reading and math, as well as the health and environmental indicators, as you can see here, and social and economic indicators, as you can see here. And when you start to add this to the information that they have, you see that the risks become significantly greater. And now looking at table 3 in the study, again, looking at PM2.5 and NO₂, that same interquartile jump, we see that females have a higher risk of asthma for that same jump than males by age 4. And then when we look at age 11, they're a bit more mitigated for females. And then for men, it's also, still higher, but lower than age 4. When we look at the effect of education or how correlated education is, we see that for parents with a higher education, they tend to see a lower risk, still elevated, right? But when we look at low to no high school, we see that we're seeing a significant increase. And so this is about a 40% greater chance by age 4, and it does drop by age 11, but these are still significantly greater. We see even larger jumps if we look at the differences between race and ethnicity amongst the different children in this study. Black kids have a significantly higher risk of asthma by age 4 when they have significant exposure to PM2.5 and NO₂. And then even by age 11, it's still significantly higher than their Hispanic, white, and other counterparts. And not surprisingly, when we look at the neighborhood characteristics, so the amount of the percent black population, higher black population tends to also be correlated with a higher risk of asthma. High density also. High population density is also highly correlated. Again, now this is not surprising because if you have more people in the area, you also have more traffic, you have more environmental pollution. And we see that this is even greater in age by age 11. This could be because by that time you might be walking to school, you might be outside more. And so, whereas in other cases, we see this slight mitigating factor there, we see a huge increase even for high population density areas. And then if we go back to those other child indicators, if we have a low child opportunity index, I see a low COI. Here, we see we have an increased risk of asthma for both 4 and 11. And so with this information, we can see that there's a lot of data there, but I still think there's something missing. But before we get to that, let me posit their explanation for why this might be the case. And so they say that early childhood is a period of heightened concern, as higher exposures may lead to altered trajectories of airway and immune system development with a decreased lung function. They also point at oxidative stress, which could reduce lung function and inflammation. So we have this pathogenic pathway with immune system development, oxidative stress, and inflammation. These are things that we definitely want to avoid, especially in those early childhood years. And recall, we're just focusing on exposure in those first 3 years and how they increase your risk of asthma at year 4 and year 11. So far, this study has been very detailed. I believe that they are seeing something that's real. These results would maybe correlate with some of our intuitions, but there are definitely some things I want to start addressing with this. And so they were looking at exposure of PM2.5 and nitrogen oxide, and they obtained daily estimates of them from 2000 to 2016 at a 1 square kilometer resolution from previously validated prediction models, and monthly PM2.5 predictions at a 6 kilometer grid for 1988 and 2007 from previously published models. Now, the thing I want to focus on is that from my own data in my home, I know how much PM2.5 can vary from events such as cooking to cleaning, taking showers, using the air fryer. Like, these things definitely impact our hyper local spaces. And so now that they're relying on estimates of these values, it definitely leaves a gap in the information. So I understand how they're tying these models, but we don't live in this estimated world. We live at an address. We live in an area where we should understand better what our acute personal individual exposure might be, particularly for these higher vulnerable communities. When I consider my own data, this is data that I've collected from my house, where I'm looking at the median particulate matter total by day and hour. And this bottom chart here is just the VOC index. We see that over the course of a month, this is data that I collected all of March, there are definitely spikes in my particulate matter, in the dust contamination of my home that are tied to cooking events. We see that this is, between 7 and 8 in the morning. This is when the kids are getting ready for school. I may have burnt toast or burnt pizza. We see that there's other events around the midday, at lunchtime, and we see a lot of events that happen towards the end of the day around 5, 6, 7, where we are cooking, cleaning, making dinner. And so we see similar things for VOCs, where we're just looking at all the volatile organic compounds. Again, we see trends in the early morning, we see trends around midday, particularly when the kids are home, and we see trends around dinner where we have these various spikes. Again, these are due to candle burning. We have a gas stove. We have all sorts of other things that could contribute to our indoor air pollution. And so you consider this with the fact they're using regional estimates. We definitely don't have the full picture of the information that could help explain the exposure risk in these populations. And the data I just showed you was generated from over 90,000 data points. And this is just from my one kitchen. You can imagine that we would have a lot more insight into not only the risk of asthma, but also understanding asthma occurrence, what might be the triggers once you've been diagnosed with asthma, as relates to what we know about the risk of asthma from PM2.5 and nitrogen oxide, as well as other environmental triggers, and perhaps what we don't know with habits and practices that provide additional context to your individualized risk. And so the last piece of the study I want to discuss is the limitation. And they're pretty clear that they say that in this analysis, we examined nitrogen oxide and PM2.5, although other pollutants common in urban environments like ozone and other traffic-related air pollution may also contribute to asthma and interact with nitrogen oxide and PM2.5. Similarly, we do not have information about the contribution of pollution from indoor environments. And this is where we really want to go from understanding not just what happens outside our home with high resolution, but what happens in individual rooms. How does the garage differ from the kitchen? And how does the kitchen and all of the air variability we have there migrate into the bedroom or into the bathroom where you might spend considerable amount of time? And so this is what I like to do. This is what Field Notes is all about. It's about understanding the signatures of our own homes. In the last video, I showed a lot of data about my own home. This is 90,000 data points from my kitchen. And believe it or not, this is not random data. It tells a story about how we lived in the month of March. As we see an increase in activity that then peaks around dinner time and then slowly comes down as we clean the kitchen, run the dishwasher, mop the floor, vacuum, all the activity that helps us to conclude our day. And this month, I have been focusing on annotating those events so that I can try to start understanding how air frying in the kitchen is different than boiling a pot of water before cooking rice, or how reheating food in the microwave is different from frying bacon on the stove. And we know that these things impact our indoor air quality, but we may not know how. And we don't necessarily know for how long. And if you're in one of these populations where you have asthma or you have other chronic issues, understanding your indoor air could be a huge source of information or for helping you and your doctor adjust your risk tolerance. In any case, if you enjoy the video, if you enjoy this manuscript, I didn't say who the authors were, Antonella Zanabetti and several other folks. This was done across multiple different cities, Boston, St. Louis, Cincinnati, a couple places on the West Coast. And so this is overall a great study. I just think there's something to understanding exactly what's happening inside of our own homes. I think this study is important for looking at large populations, but definitely highlights the need to zoom in and gain additional resolution, especially for those highly vulnerable communities. In any case, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.